But as I said, let's start with Russ. Pete Carroll got hired by the Raiders last week. And a lot of people were putting 2 and 2 together, given that he's a free agent. He has said very clearly that he wants to be a Pittsburgh Steeler again. But there's also something to be said for keeping your options open. And there's obviously a connection there between him and Pete Carroll. They had a good run in Seattle. And people are saying that they've mended their relationship. Obviously, things got rocky towards the end, and that's why Russ ended up becoming a Denver Bronco. But it really makes sense with Pete Carroll becoming the new Raiders coach. The organization, the team has been in complete disarray. Like, they may be looking for some stability, some comfort there, some familiarity at that quarterback position. If you're talking about Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, there's a lot of that between the two. No? So, obviously, with Carroll becoming the head coach last week, everyone's talking about it over the week, at the end of last week and over the weekend, whether or not Russ could potentially become a Raider if the Steelers decide to go with Justin Fields. And for whatever reason, Russ and the Steelers can't come to a contract agreement. Pete Carroll was on a podcast, I think it was just yesterday. It was either today or yesterday. And they asked him just flat out, what do you think about Russ joining the Raiders? And this was his answer. He says, right now, it's so early, and we're just in the midst of trying to find the puzzle pieces, not even putting them together yet. So I can't even really say. Free agency hasn't come yet. That's the first competitive opportunity that will occur, and then the draft is coming, and we'll have the opportunity to do things. He also said, I can't tell you right now. I mean, I could guess, but it would just be a guess. So really not saying much right there. Doing the right thing for himself, not putting him or the Raiders in a bad spot, in a poor leverage situation heading into free agency, saying, oh yeah, we want to sign Russ. No, you're keeping your options open. You're trying to figure things out. You just got hired, not even a week ago. So that's what you got to say. I get it. I definitely get it. But the more I think about Russ to the Raiders, the more it makes sense. And maybe part of it's just because I don't want Russ back with the Steelers. So I'm trying to find a new team. I'm trying to find a new situation for him so he can forget about trying to come back to Pittsburgh. Because me, and I know a bunch of you guys want to roll with Fields. So that would leave Russ without a home. And I think this could be a good one. I think it makes a ton of sense. I already mentioned the Raiders organization. The team is in absolute disarray right now. They've been in disarray for 2 decades pretty much. Now finally they got a coach in there with Pete Carroll that he knows what he's doing, but you also need to have a quarterback to pair with a coach that knows what he's doing to bring that synergy. And right now they got Aiden O'Connell. They got Aiden O'Connell and Desmond Ridder. That ain't cutting it. I don't think that's who Pete Carroll signing up for as his 2025 starter. It's like, in terms of stability, in terms of winning games, in terms of being a veteran presence, knowing how to play the quarterback position at a degree that's acceptable, Russ can do that still. We've talked about him not being prime Russ in Seattle, being, a top 10 guy anymore, but he can still win you games. Don't get me wrong. And that's what the Raiders need. They need someone. They already got Pete Carroll as the head coach. Hired a good GM, by all accounts. They also need a quarterback. They need something to get them back on the tracks. Like, they got the 2 pieces there already in terms of head coach, GM. Now that third piece, quarterback, definitely lacking when you're talking about Aiden O'Connell. He's not the answer. So they're looking for that third piece to just provide some stability, get the trains on the track, get things moving in the right direction. Not saying Russ is the answer long-term for the Raiders, but just for Pete Carroll's first season, just to bring some semblance of confidence to the Raiders organization, Russell Wilson's your answer, man. And then you talk about the familiarity. If you're asking a quarterback to come in and do that, like there's going to be guys out there, right? There's going to be potentially an Aaron Rodgers. There's going to be a potentially like a Kirk Cousins, a Sam Darnold. If you're Pete Carroll, like who do you trust most out of all these guys that are out there going to be free agents? A Russ, who you guys obviously made it work to a high degree in Seattle, or Aaron Rodgers, who, you know, with him, you don't know what you're getting. Sam Darnold, I mean, he's not going to have Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison anymore. And Kirk Cousins, like, bro, I just don't even know if he's ever going to be right again after that Achilles. It looked like he took a big step back. Whereas at least Aaron Rodgers, after his Achilles this year, we saw him those last 10 games start to pick it up, look legit. Whereas Kirk Cousins, he was doing the opposite. He was fading away. Not saying Russ is the long-term answer, but again, just for 1 year, maybe 1 or 2 years, bring some stability, bring some consistency to an organization that's been anything but. And this is why I'm not stressing about the Steelers bringing Russ back. When we're talking about these things, consistency, stability, just, you know, providing competent quarterback play, we don't need to worry about that here in Pittsburgh. We've got a ton of that over the last several years. We got a ton of stability, consistency of 9-8, 10-7, winning games, being relevant. We're trying to get to the next level. So that's why Russ doesn't do us any good, but can do the Raiders a lot of good. And with them having the 7th overall pick, like Russ could be the perfect bridge quarterback for them. Perfect bridge. Maybe at that 7th overall pick, they're looking at, depending on where Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders go, maybe they draft one of those two. If they go too early, maybe they figure they got to trade up for one of them. But either way, like 7th overall pick, that also means you got an early 2nd round pick as well. If you miss out on one of the top 2 or 3, maybe you draft a Jackson Dart, a Jalen Milroe, one of these guys in the 2nd round, and you have Russell Wilson being their mentor. And you add to the fact that Russ was already talking about potentially going to the Raiders or thinking about going to the Raiders last offseason. He ultimately signed here. But look at this report by Jeremy Fowler. He said he reached out to former Carroll lieutenants in Seattle in regards to Russ. He said they both pointed out that they would not be surprised if Carroll reached out to Russell Wilson, possibly trying to sign the free agent and make amends for what went wrong at the end of the Seattle era. One of them even pointed out that Carroll and Wilson began to rekindle their relationship about a year ago. Wilson's always been intrigued by wearing the black and silver. It all makes so much sense. No? It all makes a ton of sense. Russ to the Raiders. Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. What's your guys' thoughts? And then I'll transition to second topic for the day, and that is the Steelers coaching staff and whether or not we should bring in some more guys. Manny Meek says Raiders' best situation is to sign him. They won't get Sanders or Ward, so it actually gives Russ another chance for a full season. I think even if you sign Sanders or Ward, I think both of them are actually pretty pro-ready. So you're right. If they do go in the top 2 or 3, maybe go in the top 5, obviously they won't be available to the Raiders. But I was even thinking you could have Russ start out the season, give Shedeur, Cam Ward some time to acclimate to the NFL, let them get their feet under them, almost like Mahomes, his first season with the Chiefs. They didn't even play him at all, had Alex Smith be that bridge quarterback. So even with a Cam Ward or Shedeur, you could do that with Russ. You could have them sit behind Russ, not rush them into things. Because the Raiders right now, I don't think you want a Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward out there trying to be the savior. Now, it depends on what they do in free agency. They do have a ton of cap space, which is another reason why they could afford Russ, why Russ to the Raiders makes sense. They could give him a decent little contract. I know from the talks that we're having about how much we want to give Russ, like we're not trying to spend too much. Like his real market value might be 30-something million. I'm not trying to give him that if I'm the Steelers, especially given Justin Fields being a legitimate option for us, and most likely he's only going to cost like $10 million. But maybe on the open market, a $30 million for Russ can sway his opinion, can get him over to Las Vegas. If we're only offering Russ like 20, 25, maybe Raiders can offer him 30, 35. My only thing is, like, I don't know who is offering Russ 30 or 35. I don't even know if the Raiders are doing that. They can afford to because of their cap space. I just don't know who's paying him that much. If you got Baker Mayfield getting like 33, I don't know, bro. Giving Russ that same amount, given the age discrepancy and just the overall play between the two quarterbacks, just doesn't add up to me. Now, Baker, if he was on the open market, he probably would get more, given that he was able to do it back-to-back down there in Tampa at a pretty high clip. But still, I don't know what his market is like that, given his age and how he faded down the stretch. We saw what it was last offseason. Now, granted, no matter what team he went to last offseason, he was only going to sign for the vet minimum because of the whole Denver situation. He wasn't going to screw his new team because it was the whole thing about whatever team Russ signed for, that would be the amount that the Broncos could take away from what they already owe. So, it just wouldn't make sense for Russ to be signing for anything extravagant with his new team. But now he could hit the bank again. Manny Meek says, even from Russ's point of view, you got to think the Raiders offer him more of a chance than we do. I don't know about that. I think, like, if we don't sign Fields and we sign Russ, it's probably going to be a very similar scenario to what I just laid out with potentially the Raiders. We'd probably draft the quarterback day 1, day 2. Russ would be the mentor. And it's like only a matter of time before the draft pick takes over, whether it's after a full season, maybe it's in the middle of year 2, something like that. I would imagine it'd be actually very, very similar. Why do you think he would be getting a better chance with the Raiders than us? Because I think either spot that he signs, he's probably going to be going into the offseason in the pole position of being the starter. I think we got a better team than the Raiders. And as crazy as it sounds, as much as we've been talking down on the Steelers and how we do things, like we do got offensive pieces. We got an Arthur Smith at coordinator. Spent a lot on the defense, whereas the Raiders are just in complete disarray right now. Okay, better chance as an uncontested starter. He won't play himself out of a job. That all depends on what the Raiders do in the draft. And I think that's in both scenarios too. If we sign Russ and we don't draft the guy, then great opportunity for us. If Raiders sign Russ and don't draft the guy, great opportunity for Russ as well. But I feel like if you draft the guy, the writing's on the wall for Russ. Like you're only here to be a bridge quarterback. You're really not viewed as the future. We're not going to give you as much of benefit of the doubt. But maybe for Russ, a fresh start will be better. Going back to the West Coast, getting with a guy in Pete Carroll that believed in him back when he first entered the league. Like that type of stuff might be good for us. I don't know who their offensive coordinator is just yet, too. I don't think they signed anyone. Because that could play a part, too. Because obviously Russ, with Arthur Smith here, that's a negative for Russ coming back. That makes it not as good of an opportunity as opposed to maybe there's a Raiders OC that fits more of Russ's style. Manny Meek says, I'm also assuming Ward, Sanders, and Hunter are the top 3 picks. Yeah, it's all going to depend because if one of those quarterbacks slip maybe to 5, Raiders view that as an opportunity to trade up and try to get Ward or Sanders. I wouldn't, dude, I'm telling you, I wouldn't even look past Will Howard, man. I'm surprised that he's not being talked about as being like a bona fide first-round quarterback. Will Howard looks legit to me. I think he should be considered in that class of like Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. The more I watch him, what does he do bad? And it's not like he doesn't have upside. 6'4", can run, mobile. He's got a good arm. Just won the national championship at Ohio State. Balled out in the playoffs in the most high leverage games. Like rose to the occasion. Yeah, I'm questioning why Will Howard isn't being legit talked about as a first round pick, or even in the class of Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Let's see here. I'll read one more. B. Wilson 585 in terms of the Russ conversation. Says Rooney saying they're interested with a mobile quarterback pair with Russ, not getting along with Arthur Smith. All leads to Justin being the new bridge quarterback, building for the next few years and getting better pieces in certain key holes the Steelers have. That's another reason to me why we should go with Fields, because I feel like if you go with Fields, you're not as pressured to draft a quarterback and look to the future at the position. Whereas with Russ, yeah, I feel like you got to do that. You definitely got to do that, given his age and how he went 0-5 down the stretch and the offense didn't look good. So, like, who's saying that couldn't happen again with him being a year older? And Russ isn't the future. He's just not the future for the next 4 or 5 years down the line. He's not. I know he talked on a couple podcasts last offseason of wanting to win more Lombardis, couple Super Bowls, play into his 40s, but we saw how his first season looked in a Steeler uniform. It's not to that level anymore. It's not to that elite Seattle play that he used to give back in, 2014, 2015, 2016. It's just not there anymore. Because, yeah, I'm with you. We still have other key holes. And that's why, if we draft a quarterback in the first or second round, we're missing out on a D lineman, a receiver, a cornerback, or potentially a running back. Like, we legitimately need a receiver. We need another running back. We need another cornerback. And we need another D lineman. Like, that's 4 things that are pressing needs. So if we don't seriously address those things in free agency, which I think we're going to at least hit on 1 or 2 of those, right? But then that leaves you, I feel like, needing to hit on the other 2 in the draft and the first 2 picks in the draft. Like, say we sign a T. Higgins, we sign an Amari Cooper or something in free agency, and we sign back Dante Jackson. I definitely feel like we got to get a D lineman first round. Running back, then you're talking about in the second or third round. Maybe you could push that back to the third round, given the position, which would open up an opportunity to draft one of those quarterbacks at day 2, whether you're talking like Jackson Dart. I don't think Will Howard is going to be a day 2 quarterback. Jackson Dart, Will Howard, or Jalen Milroe. Like, those are the guys that are being talked about second round right now. But I think re-signing Fields gives you more options. It doesn't force you to have to draft a quarterback, because Fields is supposed to be the future. You're re-signing Fields to see if he could live up to his potential, hit his ceiling, and be the future for you, given that he's only 26. Creation says we could do more with our roster bringing back Justin. 100%. That's what I think. Should cost less, so you could spend more in free agency. And I think you could do more with, not even just with your roster, with the person. You could do more with your offense. There's a reason we didn't have the full faith in Russ, even when he was starting for us last year, to do it snap in, snap out, series in, series out. We put some Justin Fields packages out there. We ain't ever doing that with Big Ben. Come on, bro. But with Russ, I think in a way we admitted that he's a little limited right now, that he can't do everything that a Justin Fields can do. So why not just give the whole offense to Fields? Dude can do it with his legs. Dude can do it with his arm. He just needs to flat out get better at the position. But again, that comes with time. That comes with opportunity. That comes with snaps. If we re-sign him, we can give him the 17 games in 2025. Make or break. Manny Meek says Fields gives the fans something to look forward to next year. Simple as that. 100%. I think there's actual hope. There's actual hope. There's a little bit of excitement. Even though I think a lot of that has been washed away given our late season collapse and the fact that we're pretty much running it back across the board with coaching. I don't think there's going to be it doesn't look like there's going to be grand changes from a personnel standpoint either and how we do things. Even though the hope has dwindled because of all that, at least Fields can spark it back up, I think. It gives you something.